they often are being arrested for prostitution, and we're never getting to the pimps, we're never getting to the people who are actually doing the trafficking. Well, and when we punish the victims, whether it's a victim who is an undocumented immigrant or a victim of human trafficking, we never get to the real perpetrators of the crime, first of all, and we create these multi-layers of barriers for anyone to ever seek help. They're afraid to even look for help because they might get shipped somewhere,
you might
arrested.
get deported.
Absolutely. So it becomes extra hard to try to serve the people that we're trying to serve, because we're just one more scary thing out there that isn't going to help them.
One of our viewers is somebody I went to high school with. Okay? Their grandparents were Americans. Why should they care what happens to these people?
So many people misunderstand the whole dynamic of domestic violence and sexual assault. They think it's not happening to them or their friends. People are astounded when they learn that the neighbor down the street, friend of a friend, somebody they go to church with, has been a victim and has not been empowered to get the help or to speak out. So, on the one hand, we've got just anybody in the community who might have been affected by this, filtering down to the neediest of the needy who have zero resources. If we don't care about everybody and try to help them, nobody gets helped. And we shove it under the carpet, and these become issues that nobody talks about, and they damage our society.
A third of American women could expect to be raped in their life. Do you think that that's still an accurate number? And what about men?
The study just came out, and it was 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 men have been sexually assaulted in their lifetime. And that's a big chunk of our population.
It's a ton of people.
And when you think that 3/4 of those sexual assaults are by someone that the victim knows, these aren't strangers jumping out of bushes. They're people that are known and trusted and are part of our society and part of that person's life.
Otherwise, they couldn't get access to you.
I mean, think of the damage that it's doing to young people, who are at the most risk. Not that sexual assault doesn't happen to everybody, but we're really looking at that teenage through 25-year-old group of people in our community who are in tremendous risk of being sexually assaulted. Part of breaking the cycle of violence is educating women about what that cycle looks like, so that in the future, if they find themselves in a relationship, they see those red flags. They say, oh, he's really controlling, he's very jealous, all of those things that we know are precursors to the violence. So half of it's education. It's absolutely educating victims about what to watch for. One of my favorite things ever is if you're given an ice cube, how do you make it round? Everybody says, oh, you chop the corners off and stuff.
You apply heat.
You just melt the thing and refreeze it. But that's, to some extent, I wish we could do that as a society. Let's just melt the whole thing down and build it from scratch instead of trying to work in this infrastructure we have sometimes. We had to do that to some extent at Weave when we lost about $500,000 all in 1 year. I said, we can't, it's not business as usual. We're going to look at everything, nothing is sacred, and we, in 1 day, laid off 22 people.
Oh my.
Yes, it was.
Where'd those people land?
Well, we created 12 different jobs, and some of them had the education and experience and interest in those new jobs, but a lot of people just ended up leaving. It was painful, but it made us stronger and kept our lights on and our doors open.
When you're going to raise funds, how do you decide which organizations to work with? How do you decide what's worth your time and energy?
As a volunteer and donor, or me as a professional?
Both. As you as a human being who lives in both of those capacities.
I think that when I was first starting out, I didn't think as much about what the mission was of the organization. I mean, I like public radio as much as the next person when I first took that job. When I came to Weave, I came here because I knew it would be a very difficult environment for me to work in. I don't gravitate towards people in pain and tend to not want to look at human suffering.
Like most of us.
Like most of us, but then it was very gratifying. Every day made a difference. I got to a point after 6 years where a number of things were happening, but I couldn't have the conversation with donors that I was having anymore. It was everybody was disclosing to me, and it was it just was, it's a hard conversation to talk to somebody about. So I went back to public radio where it's all about, I like to listen to NPR, and everybody's,
I like the world.
it's all about me and what I like to listen to on the radio. It's a different conversation, different donor conversation. And I liked that for a while. It was nice to get away from pain and suffering and people giving because they were assaulted, that sort of thing. But eventually, all roads led me back to doing this work where I come to work and I know whatever it is I'm doing is changing or improving somebody's life today. Just because I'm
real people that you could point at and say, Susie Jones' life was better because we funded the Rape Crisis Center or whatever, something
Absolutely.
like
that. And I think that for somebody who's looking at a job in fundraising, for instance, be sure it's something you want to talk about all day, because it's going to be your life, and be sure it's something you're really passionate about. And if you're looking to get involved with an organization as a donor or a volunteer, be passionate about it. I mean, my board of directors is outstanding because we're finally at a point where everybody's on it because they are passionate about it and want to go out and raise money. Nobody's just taking up a seat. And too often we get involved in these volunteer things, or
because our buddy at church told us to go.
Exactly. So I think that you got to have the passion for the mission.
One of our viewers is sitting there going, I wish I knew what I wanted to do. I want to do something, but nothing's calling my name. How can they find out where their niche is?
I think look for what you wish could be better or different. Look at where you can change or enhance a life, even if it's your own life. I mean, I love the arts. I grew up in the arts. And for some people, their calling is, I want this museum to be bigger and better, or I want all kids to have access to the arts. Whatever it is that you see that there's a hole in our society. And I would encourage people, call executive directors, chat with them, see what they're doing that makes a difference in this world. And
watch more of my videos. I have interviews with a number of them.
And see what really resonates with you. And align yourself with an organization that is making a difference, is using its money well, is transparent, and has a big vision for something that
you can sign on
with.
Was there a moment at which you knew that service was going to be a major aspect of your life, an epiphany?
Right out of college, I got a job at a title company, and I worked there for 2.5 years, and that was a whole lot.
What did you do?
I was an escrow assistant, and my
Okay.
research titles, and I didn't like it very much. It was okay. I liked the people I worked with and all, but going back to grad
didn't inspire you.
Did not inspire me. And I worked for Delta Airlines briefly, doing reservations, which was equally uninspiring for me. In grad school, I got the only non-teaching assistantship. Everybody else had to teach speech, and I was the publicity director for the theater department. And so I had this role of, we weren't raising money per se, but we did all the direct mail pieces, and I worked with the media, and I liked that role. I liked working with the folks that contributed to the theater, and either with time or money, and I managed all the volunteers who worked in the box office and such. And so, felt like the job I was meant to have. And in fact, it's what I've been doing ever since, if you really think about it.
Please summarize briefly the various organizations that you give time and money to, your efforts.
So I'm on the boards of directors, which always involves time and or money, of the Midtown Business Association, Planned Giving Forum of Sacramento, which is a fundraising entity, the ALS Association, CalCASA, which is a statewide coalition of rape crisis centers that does a lot of advocacy work at the Capitol. First Five Commission, Children's Coalition, and I give money to Capital Public Radio, our local public radio station. Also, there's 2 theater groups in town that I give to, and I mean, I'd give a lot more if people would ask. I think that's one of the biggest challenges in our community with fundraising. There are a lot of groups that if they asked me, I'd give them a gift, and they just don't. And I give to my alma mater.
If you knew that you could not fail, if I were able to give you an ironclad 100% guarantee of success on your next project, what would you attempt?
Well, it's already in the planning stages, but I'm not sure we can pull it off. It's to build a shelter to house men and the LGBTQ community and folks with disabilities and anybody for whom a shelter for women and children is not an appropriate place. And nobody's done it before the way I've envisioned it, and I've got the funding to build it. I don't know how we're going to sustain it. So to me, it is out of the box because it's not in alignment with what everybody else is doing in this country, but I think it can make a big difference with victims. Well, and that's part of why we envisioned this project that I'm calling Open House, because I don't like that there is so much judgment around who can or cannot come into a women's shelter and live. There are some people that they just can't cohabitate in a big, huge, institutionalized sort of safe house. So it's envisioned as being smaller apartments and, you know, being able to slice and dice the population and best serve people.
Right now, we just recently passed 7 billion human beings on the planet. Let's pretend for a moment that all of them are going to watch this video. What would you say to us?
What would I say to everyone on the planet? I think I would say that each of you are valuable and deserve to be treated with dignity and live in a violence-free home and have respect.
If I could give you any superpower, one that you've heard of, bending steel, x-ray vision, those kinds of things, or one that you make up on the spot, which one would you request from me?
The superpower I would pick, I think it would be to be able to instantly know what a person needs. Whether it's just a kind word or something more farther pinging on the scale of Maslow. I think I'd like to really be able to know what somebody needs from me in that moment.
Who are your heroes?
My heroes? Well, right now I would pick Tina Fey. She's smart and hilarious.
And cute.
And cute. Gosh, you know, I'm probably going to throw Hillary in there just because I think she's put up with a whole lot of crap and she doesn't deserve it. And
she's stayed a lady the whole time.
She just continues to power on.
How can we take people who just have average parents or even subpar parents and help them to become the kind of a servant leader that you are, or Dennis is, or Bob is?
You know, I think people who've had it a little tougher or had parents who weren't always supportive sometimes rise up to be the best leaders. I think it can be paralyzing to have parents that expect too much out of you. I mean, I look at it with my own kids. Am I expecting the world out of this child who's just a child? So I think out of adversity comes resilience and strength for a lot of people, and they're probably tougher and better people than the rest of us.
Thank you so much for meeting with me. You've been very kind and gracious with your time and your energy, and I wish you continued success.
Thank you. Thank you for picking me as part of your project.
so much for taking the time to meet with me, Beth. Please tell me your full name and the position you occupy and how you ended up there.
I'm Beth Hassett, the Executive Director of Weave, which is a organization, nonprofit in Sacramento, and I've been the Executive Director for almost 6 years now.
Where were you raised?
I was raised in Massachusetts, and then when I was in junior high school, we moved to Terre Haute, Indiana, where I went to junior high and high school, and then I got out of the Midwest and made my way further west as I went.
Please tell us a little bit about your family of origin, what your parents did, brothers and sisters, etc.
I grew up with one sister, 5 years younger than me, and my parents. My dad ran a professional theater company and was a theater professor and playwright. My mother wrote Harlequin romances. So I grew up in this ridiculous family of creative people who stayed up all night doing creative things, and it was a very nurturing and interesting environment to grow up in.
What, if any, religion were you raised in?
I was raised 6th generation Mormon on both sides of my family, and made the choice to not remain in the Mormon church right about when I graduated from college. So it was a big part of my childhood, but I did not continue down that path.
And is your husband ethnically Mormon as well?
I married a Quaker boy, and a Mormon and a Quaker equals a Methodist. So when we have gone to church, we have gone to the Methodist church.
I hadn't heard that equation before.
Enough structure for me, enough liberal, loosey-goosey stuff for him.
Please tell us about your post-secondary education. Where'd you go to school and what'd you study?
I have a bachelor's degree in finance, and then I got my master's at Indiana State University in theater, and my intention was to raise money for the arts. I did not end up on that path.
Please tell us what the mission of Weave is, what it stands for, and what's your part in it.
Weave grew out of the women's movement like many of our sister organizations in the 70s, and so we've been around since 1978, starting out as a domestic violence center and then taking on the rape crisis work for the county of Sacramento. And in the past 3 years, we've added